I don't need to say Zoomy rules, but if you could, please just be on mute while our guests are speaking. Our format today, we're going to have our guests just introduce themselves very briefly, and then I'll pull up the agenda. We worked on some questions, John and I. Thank you for those that did submit some questions. We wanted to make sure our time was succinct in addressing the assignment that everybody has. And so we came up with kind of 3 questions that really got to the meat of things. Thanks, Nolan. And so with that, I will share our agenda and we'll just get started. And I'm gonna be quiet and turn it over to John.
All right, so again, thanks everybody for joining us this morning. We know these are sort of odd times, challenging times in a number of different ways, and even peeling off a little bit of time to get together is challenging. But from our past virtual gatherings over the last few months, I think pretty rewarding and definitely worth the time. To me, this is one of the most valuable lab sessions that we have. We're in a thing called Leadership Lab, and when you look at the communities in the near West Side area, there is no position of greater noted leadership than if you are the mayor or president or the highest elected official in your community. Most people think of their community first as their neighborhood and their municipality, their city. Then it expands out from there. And the challenges that, especially over the last several months, but just in general in good times or in normal times, the challenges facing municipalities and elected officials is challenging. Over the course of the last 4 cohorts or 3 cohorts, we've had several elected officials from multiple municipalities be in our cohort. We have elected officials with us even today, Erica, and people that know what it's like to sit up at the dais and make policy decisions. This is tough. It's not easy. It's not a popularity contest. And no matter what vote you make, you're pleasing some and upsetting others and hopefully doing what you think is best. Today, we are fortunate enough to have the mayors, the elected leaders from 4 adjacent communities that, and we've never had all 4 before, so this is fantastic. So from Forest Park, from Maywood, from Oak Park, and from River Forest, and we're going to get a chance to hear from each one of these mayors or presidents what some of the challenges are that they are facing, the biggest issues, some of their successes, what are the things that they've done as elected leaders that they are most proud of. And we've shaped these questions that Carrie and I have listed with regard to sort of the issues of the day, and those being the issue of the COVID pandemic and how that has affected in multiple ways our communities, and then the challenge of dealing with systemic racism and the issues that have arisen from that and manifested in different ways in our communities. So we've challenged each one of the elected leaders to speak to 3 real specific questions regarding these 2 overarching topics. They can certainly go in other directions, but as you know with our panelists, we ask them to address a lot in a very short period of time. Each one is going to have 15 minutes to address these questions. What's a specific issue has been the most challenging with regard to COVID? And give examples of where you feel that you've really been stretched or your team has been put to the test by some of this unfounded challenges. What work are you most proud of over the last 6 months? What have you done that you think others can really maybe learn from, or what your greatest accomplishments as a leader in addressing systemic racism and the issues of COVID over the last 6 months? And what are some of the things that you've done as a leader? What have you done that you feel have begun to address some of these issues? Committees, exploratory panels, planning, policy, investigations, specific initiatives or actions, and direct response to what we've been, put up against. So these are the 3 questions we've challenged each mayor/president to address. Each one will have about 15 minutes. To our panelists, again, thank you for joining us and giving us a little bit of your time. Warning to all 4 of you, our cohorts have a good track record of asking pretty hard questions. And we tell them not to ask the softball stuff, but the stuff we really want to know that may not be easy to answer. So they will be taking notes, they will be taking close attention, and when the panel gets done, we'll turn it over to our class and they will ask you questions that hopefully get at the heart of what it takes to really be a leader. So to all you leaders from the different cities, thank you so much for attending. So I think what we do is real quick, a 1-minute speed introduction, name, the town you're the elected official for, how many years in office. We've got some mayors that have been here for a while. We've got some that are new. And I'd like to hear how long you've been in office. So a brief introduction from each one of the 4 of you, and then we'll get started with our questions. So Mayor Perkins, or Hoskins, let's start with you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Rory Hoskins, and as you know, I'm the elected mayor of Forest Park. I've been mayor since May 13th, 2019. I'm serving a 4-year term. Prior to being elected mayor, I served as a village commissioner in Forest Park for 8 years, from 2007 to 2015. I felt like 8 years of service consecutively was plenty, so I took a break. I've lived in Forest Park for 20 years. My wife and I are raising 4 kids in this town, ages 23, 21, 18, and 10. So how's that for an introduction?
Pretty good, pretty good. All right, Mayor Perkins.
Hi, I'm Edwenna Perkins. I'm the mayor of the village of Maywood. I'm in my 7th year as mayor, and I have 3 adult children and 2 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. Nice to be with you.
And Mayor Perkins, how long have you been mayor in Maywood?
7 years. This is my
7
7th
years.
year.
Yep. All right, is Mayor Abu-Taleb on? From Oak Park?
Good morning. I just made it. Just had a little technical issues there. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
You have a question for me?
No, just if you could give us like a 1-minute, how long you been in office, who you're mayor for, and how, and just a little background.
I've been in office for about 7 years, and I represent the village of Oak Park.
All right, and I think our last panelist is not on yet, correct? I don't think so.
Correct. I don't see her yet, John.
Okay, and that's Cathy Adduci, and I believe Cathy, Anan, and Edwenna have all been they're the mayors for the same period of time, for 7 years to date, correct? I think all of you are in the same boat. And Rory, I think you are, Mayor Hoskins, I think you're the newbie on the panel, at least as being a mayor, but it looks as a commissioner, you've got maybe you outpace them in terms of your service as elected official as a commissioner. I think one of the things that I can say I've not worked with Mayor Hoskins, but I've been lucky enough to direct the comprehensive plan in each of the 4 communities going back over the last 20 years. Forest Parks I did about 20 years ago, not their most recent, the one before this, but I've been lucky enough to work with Mayor Taleb, Mayor Perkins, and President Adduci in the last 10 years or so. So I'm fortunate to have worked with all three of the 4 of you. So with that, what I'm going to do is we'll turn it over, and we'll do this probably in the same order, Carrie, that we just did introductions.
Fine.
Carrie will be our clock keeper. She's brutal. So don't plan on running over because she won't let you anyway. And I think with Zoom, she actually controls your mic. So even better.
That's right. I have power. Lady behind the curtain.
So what we'll do is we'll start with Mayor Hoskins. And again, the 3 questions that are on everybody's screen, if you could just speak from your position as mayor and address these 3 questions, and you'll have about 15 minutes, and Carrie's going to run the clock. So Mayor Hoskins, you're up first.
Thanks, John. So in terms of, what were some of the biggest challenges during COVID? I think one of the biggest challenges is certainly the social distancing. There's the enforcement aspect of it, and then there's just the aspect where it changes how we interact with each other. And what's been particularly noteworthy in Forest Park is that, since March, when we began doing all of our meetings by Zoom, not being able to gather sort of eroded, not eroded, but it kind of impacted our sense of community in Forest Park. People reverted back to their screens, the different Facebook groups. People kind of talk to people who share their own perspectives a lot of the time. And so that's kind of challenged us in terms of moving forward with an agenda. And that's unfortunate. Other challenges, of course, were reopening, the bars and the taverns and the restaurants on Madison Street. Of course, getting business people as well as consumers to embrace mask wearing. Of course, the some of the social unrest or justifiable protest marches in response to police brutality and incidents of misconduct around the country presented a challenge to Forest Park. The looting that took place in Chicago and in neighboring suburbs, particularly North Riverside, Berwyn, Cicero, really raised blood pressures in Forest Park. So balancing the need for consistent, sound law enforcement versus responding to justifiable concerns about police, it was a challenge. Back to the bars and whatnot, maintaining social distancing and capacity restrictions, that's an ongoing challenge. We had to actually shut down the bar, which is pretty rare in Forest Park. Some people used to consider Forest Park to be a bar town. I don't consider the town to be a bar town, but we certainly have our share of pubs along Madison Street, Roosevelt Road, and to some extent, Randolph Street. But anyway, just having to say no a lot of times has been a challenge. I like to think of myself as an elected official who can broker compromise and eventually arrive at a yes that doesn't give each side everything they want, but it gives both sides some of what they want. But in the midst of a pandemic, we often have to say no. No, you can't have a big party. No, you can't have a gathering in the park. No, you can't have 100 people. We're going to follow the state guidelines. And so there's a lot of saying no. But it's still an honor to serve. In terms of some of the unrest, I see some racial resentment. I'm the first African-American or Black person to serve in village government in Forest Park. And sometimes I feel what I consider to be an underlying or sort of a latent level of resentment. I don't broadcast that all the time, but there are certain business owners in town that I know are having a hard time. And as they see an environment that is changing, a more diverse population, it evidences, the resentment evidences itself in conversations and comments and phone calls. I'll give you an example. We have a bar that is primarily patronized by African-American people. And we get complaints about, unruly crowds at this bar. But in reality, the crowds are no bigger than any other bar. People complain about motorcycle riders blasting music through town. Everyone's dining on Madison Street these days, so you're not dining inside. I recently had dinner in Elmhurst, dining outside along their York Road Street with some friends, and I saw motorcycles, riding by blaring music as well. SUVs riding by blaring music. So it's not, unique to Forest Park. It's just that the persons on the motorcycles wear a different color, right? So maybe that's not a threat. So I'm going to move on from challenges. Some things that we're proud of. I'm really proud of the partnership that has maintained among mayors. I think it was Mayor Anan who convened a series of calls during phases 2 and 3 of the pandemic, where Mayor Anan, Mayor Adduci, and myself had like a weekly call along with our units of government where we could sort of compare notes and share stories. Managing religious congregations and enforcing distancing and capacity limitations has also been a challenge. Forest Park has several churches, including one really large church where it was challenging to get them to buy into remote religious services. But again, serving has been a privilege, and I think we've led the village well. Some of the things that I'm proud of, again, working with neighboring towns, being quick to purchase masks and infrared thermometers, helping other jurisdictions to secure certain items of personal protective equipment, including the infrared thermometers. Working with the West Central Municipal Conference, we helped several neighboring communities secure those early before it was time for phase 4 reopening, and taking temperatures became normal. So we've continued to engage the public. We've obviously adopted the Zoom meetings and other online platforms to communicate. We've set up a Forest Park Facebook page. The village had never before had its own Facebook page, an official Facebook page. So we've cut costs using this, and we're able to effectively, get our message out. And we've worked well with the Park District and with the school district, with remote learning, distributing lunches, whatnot. Still responding to law enforcement needs in Forest Park. And we've also, enhanced partnerships with our legislative representatives in Springfield, Senator Lightford, Representative Welch. Our Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson has been very helpful in making sure that our first responders, had what they needed. So I'm proud that we've been able to maintain, all the communications that we have. In Forest Park, we've recently engaged a consultant to help us with PR and strategic communications, so we can continue to engage the public. And then the last thing I'll talk about in terms of initiatives. Carrie, how much time do I have? Hello?
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Okay.
Rory,
I want to make sure
Rory,
I'm your time.
Rory, I'll give you half of my time, so keep going.
I don't want your time.
We'll work on a deal.
Mayor Anan. Thank you. But I'm winding it down in terms of initiatives. We really wanted to bring diversity to Forest Park. I'm really glad that people are talking about structural racism, implicit bias. I mean, we have nearly 40% of our town African American, and little to no African American representation on our police department. So what I've done is appointed, African Americans to roles where they'll interact with our first responders, whether it's the police pension board or the fire pension board or the police and fire commission. We're talking about the need for implicit bias training. The PR consultant we engaged is an African American. I plan to have that individual working closely with our police department. We have an African American consultant helping us with our social media. We've hired an African American to be our local ordinance judge. We have a Filipino gentleman who heads up our census complete count committee. And I've also appointed people who are not African American, of course. I've appointed several younger people closer to my age group. I feel like the fact that we had the same mayor for the last 20 years very hardworking mayor, but he tended to appoint people who he knew, and I think were closer to his generation. There's a little bit of distance in terms of our ages, but suffice it to say that I think I'm making some of the appointments that really reflect the population of Forest Park. And having said that, I'll yield my time to Mayor Anan. Mayor Anan, I'm really sorry about what happened to your house a couple weeks ago. I meant to call you. The last thing I'll say is that one of the biggest challenges is the polarization that has impacted our communities. I mean, it's like everyone just knows that they're right. And people get dug in on positions. And like I said, they go back to social media and they reinforce their own thoughts. And we saw that manifest in a very ugly way in Oak Park when they vandalized the mayor's home in response to an honest difference of opinion. And I hope that doesn't spread to other communities. So thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Hoskins. I got a follow-up question just to make sure I was taking notes. The first person of color is mayor or an elected on the city council, not just mayor?
Elected on the city council.
Wow. Okay.
First and only elected to village government.
That's,
After I served, they elected a young woman who was half Filipino and half German ancestry to serve on village council, but I was the first person of color to serve in village government.
yeah, to anybody else who's listening, that is Forest Park is a pretty diverse community. If you look at the percentage of makeup of the population, that statement surprised me. I did not know that. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, next we're going to go over to Mayor Perkins. Mayor Perkins, it is your time.
Mayor Perkins, you are on mute. Let me see if I can undo that for you. It's not working on my end.
Mayor Perkins, can you hear us? You're still on mute, I believe.
Yep.
There
you go.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd just like to say I've been on the board since the year 2000, but this is my 7th year as mayor of the village of Maywood. I am running for a 3rd term, but just to answer the questions that were given to me, the specific issue that's been the most challenges has been challenged in many areas that being there are times never seen before across generations. For me as mayor with a town with many needs, the most challenging area is census participation. To ensure safety to all, it has been very hard to reach many, which will cause the loss of funds drastically needed in the community. In the area of systemic racism, it has been around my entire life. It is one of the things that encouraged me to become a leader. COVID has forced me as a leader to stand back and see the whole picture of what we towns are open to going through at any given time. We have to stand together against public police brutality, unfair housing standards, and simply being overlooked and underserved as a minority community. So what works are you most proud of? During the pandemic, I'm most proud that I was able to lead my village board in distributing PPE and assisting nonprofit and church distribution food to our residents. I'm also proud of the fact that when asked to stay at home and stay in place, our residents, for the most part, followed the direction of the governor. I'm proud that Maywood community, along with the police and local officials, formed the surrounding towns, stood and marched for justice. As the first female mayor in the township, it makes me feel good that doors have started to open, and now with 4 African-American mayors, 2 being women, structural racism is beginning to change shapes. And say, what initiatives have you undertaken or planned or taken that you feel address the pandemic? Our village has been our village has made changes to accommodate social distancing for the safety of employees, officials, and residents. As president of the board, policies are being reviewed to address concerns with police. The village census committee is partnering and participating in local free testing for COVID-19. At Rock of Ages on Wednesdays, we have testing, and also Merrill's Park has testing. So we are out doing what we can to make sure that our community is addressed. And also we're doing, our census committee is doing various little pop-ups to try to engage the citizens of the village of Maywood to participate in our census, because as we all know, that's one of the most important things that's going on for us right now, because we have to get our finances, and with things going forward and how bad things begin to look, we need our citizens to participate in this event. And if you have any suggestions as to what we, the Village of Maywood, can do to encourage this, please share that with us. And I apologize to Mayor Mo Park. I had not heard of your situation, and my prayers go out to you, my condolences, because one thing about life, it is short, and people have their own ideas. And for the people to decide to not wear a mask to save their family is kind of hard to understand and believe, but it is out here. As you know, our leader does not believe in it, and it's hurting our people, because for the many people that have died, I saw a young lady on TV yesterday. She's been dealing with this for 6 months. That's the first time I've heard that, but I watched the news yesterday. She's been involved in this for 6 months. She's lost memory. It's unbelievable what she said that she has been going through with this problem. But yet and still, you have people out here that do not believe this is real. They believe it's fake news. Too many people are dying for this to be fake news. You look at the crowd that he had yesterday. It's unbelievable, but it is what it is. And we as leaders have to get over to our people here in the township. This is real. We've lost too many people. If you lost one life, that's one life too many. But we've got to speak to our people and get it over to our youth. This is real. We don't know when this is going to end, but until it ends, we have to stay focused, and we have to encourage our people to take part, to be involved, not go home, pull down their shades and say, it doesn't affect me. All of this affects all of us. And that's what we as leaders got to get over to our citizens. We're doing our Zoom meetings, and we're doing what we can. Last night, WTMT, W came and interviewed Maywood, which was an asset. And it's just hard, but it is, as my mom always said, it may be hard, but it is fair. So I'll pass on to the next individual. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just real quick before we go on to Anan, do you have a sense of what the revenue decline has been since this started over the last several months for Maywood? In terms of, you talked about the economic hit and the ability to sort of address things because of that. Do you have a sense of what the revenue decline has been for Maywood?
No, I don't have exact
Okay.
amounts that it's affecting, because like I said, the fact that we don't have that many business with the restaurants and all, the few that we have, it really has hurt them. It has affected some of our sales and so forth, but we are holding on, which is basically all you can do,
Right.
and hope for the best and for better.
Right. And so yeah, I'm glad you brought that point up, and I'm glad Mayor Hoskins also sort of mentioned about trying to get some of the businesses opened up and the taverns and the pubs and the restaurants. Cities are not businesses by definition, but they are by function in certain ways. And just like a household needs money coming in so you can pay the bills going out, and a business has to have money coming in to pay its employees going out. Running a city is costly, as all of you mayors know. And one of the things that some people might not be as aware as mayors are astutely aware of, and that is the financial hit to municipalities, not just individuals' households, but cities as organizations, and the decreased revenue coming in, the ability of cities to maintain services going out. It's a real challenge. So I'm glad you brought that up. I thought that was a really good point. Next, Anan, we're going to kick it over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Mayor Hoskins, Mayor Perkins, thank you so much. It's always good to be with you. And I think that you really have articulated, both of you have articulated the challenges that we have faced over the last what feels to be like 6 years, even though it has been about 6 months or so. But this has been a perfect storm in terms of the pandemic, the social unrest, and this economic downturn. And it has been a big challenge. And I think we haven't hit bottoms yet. I think the next year, 2 years, 3 years are going to be a big challenge for us as government, for us as businesses, and for us as just as a community as a whole. So it's I think what has been challenging, the most, and still continues to be, I view this, I'm sorry, I view the situation we're in more like a war than anything else. And unfortunately, we don't have all the ammunition to fight this war. And I feel that what's happening here is, as both mayors have indicated, this seems to be, for some, as a political football, so to speak. And the people who need help are not getting it because on a national level, people interest is not being addressed in a proper way. And so what do we do going forward? I just think that we just have to be honest and candid with each other. We have to communicate. And as Mayor Hoskins has indicated earlier, and actually from the beginning, I've always viewed our communities, Forest Park, River Forest, Oak Park, and I'm sorry, Mayor Perkins, because we are a little bit far away geographically, but we viewed these communities as one. We're really interconnected, and we depend on each other for our businesses to succeed. And we share a high school between two communities, so we have a lot that we are interconnected with. And in my mind, we don't compete, but we collaborate, and I feel it has been really a good relationship. I think one of the things that we have done in Oak Park from the beginning is we understood the magnitude of what this pandemic can do. And we understood that it was really important to not burden our health system. It was important for us to keep the infection rate down. And as you folks know, that we were first to announce, this stay-at-home order that in a sense, we feel that, that we kind of forced the state's hands to follow through and to also make it a state law. And I think that when we look back, 10, 15 years from now, when we look back at how, we jumped on this particular pandemic and claimed and did the stay-at-home order, and the state did the same thing, we will look back and feel it was a good decision, because I think we've accomplished what we have to set out to do, which is not burden our health systems, and to also keep the infection rate low, and to make sure that that people understood what we are dealing with here. Fast forward, 6 months later, we are dealing with some financial issues. We're going to have a shortfall in our village of about over $12 million in terms of, the budget we're facing. And you got to think about the revenue sources we have. We have revenue from parking, but we also use that revenue to pay the bonds we have issued to build those parking garages. So the debt hasn't gone away. The services are not gone away. The revenue's gone. I think one of the big challenges that we're facing today is that I'm concerned about having vacancies in our community, because a lot of small businesses are not going to make it. And the federal government are not stepping up to the plate to provide the necessary help or the needed oxygen for the time being for these small businesses to live another day. When you think about that, when you have vacancies, they say vacancies and crime, there's a correlation between that. When you think about vacancies and a shortfall in terms of sales tax, when you think about vacancies in terms and the appearance it gives to a particular business district, it's not good for anybody, not good for anyone. So we have, and we will continue to have lots of challenges in the next, 2-3 years, and I'm really concerned about that. And I think the other challenge that we are facing today is the social unrest, and I totally agree that police brutality is real, and I believe that reform is a must. But I also happen to believe that through respectful dialogue and through putting people in a room who can figure things out and identifying what needs to change, I think that's how we can move forward and how we can help each other out. Because I think that destroying our cities, looting, vandalism, it's only going to make it a lot worse for these small businesses, and it's going to make it a lot worse for communities to hang on to their residents, and it's going to make it a lot worse for us to be able to want to support and lift each other up. And so I think that we all have a responsibility, and I think that's one of the challenges that I believe that we face, is that we all have a responsibility to de-escalate situations. We have a responsibility to reach out to one another. We have a responsibility to set out a good example for young people that violence leads to violence, that a crime is a crime, that violating other people's rights may not help you seek that change that you need. It takes time. We have to be patient, but we have to be diligent. And I think we have to also address those needs and reform what must be reformed. So, I just want to give you a general idea about where we have been, where we're going. And I'm, the bottom line is I am concerned about, as Rory said, about how it's us versus them mindset that started on a national level and now it's trickled down to a local level. I'm concerned about what sort of elected officials we're going to have the next time around. I just hope that this pandemic and the situation we're in, this perfect storm, I hope it help people to make a better decision and have a better judgment on how to select their elected officials. Because at the end of the day, you want people in office who have life experiences and who are able to have a spine against pressure to do the right thing. And I think that we need elected officials who are able to bring us together, not divide us, try to find the best in us and try to bring the best in us out and try to help our communities. I think, as you all know, that sometimes, people say, well, let me vote for so-and-so because it looks like they're nice enough I could have a beer with them. Well, it's not about having a drink with the elected official. It's about having someone in office who is going to exercise a good judgment and deliver good services, needed services, and to keep the community together and to keep people moving in the right direction. So I just hope that this is a message we can take across, because when we have good elected officials in any town, it's good for other towns. And I think it's a really important message to deliver right now to the public, is that please pay attention and select people who demonstrate good judgment and who have life experiences that we can all benefit from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, I like how you sort of summed up, we have a responsibility to address these issues. We have a responsibility to be respectful. We have a responsibility to get these things done and to listen and to work cooperatively. And then you sort of threw down the gauntlet of, it's not easy necessarily being a leader. It's not a popularity contest. And I can remember, I think it was the very first session that we ever had, Cathy Yen said, if you think you're going to be a leader and make everybody happy, you're in the wrong business, because if you're a leader, when the tough stuff has to get made, you're going to upset some people and make other people happy. But it's a hard thing to be a good leader. It's not necessarily an easy thing. Real quick question, before we get to Cathy, one of the differentiating things I believe between Oak Park and our other communities with us today is you have your own health department at a municipal level. I don't believe Maywood, Forest Park, or River Forest have a health department. Did that make it any different or easier or more challenging in Oak Park's response to the pandemic because it had a department or a resource that other cities didn't, as opposed to relying on the county? So I'm just curious how that might have factored into your response.
It has made a big difference, and I think we are lucky that we have Mike Charlie, who does a good job for us. But it made a big difference in terms that we have more control in our destiny, and that we're able to make decisions that other towns could not have made. And one of the reasons I was able to make the decision way before everybody else, first in state, to be able to make that decision is because we have a health department. And otherwise we'd have to follow Cook County, or we'd have to follow whatever region we're in. And it's been really helpful for me in terms of learning more about this pandemic and understanding more about the data and what's behind it. And it's been One of the things that I'm really proud of in our village is that we have excellent staff, and they have, I feel like we had the right generals during this war. And without good generals, you can't win a war.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we have won the war, but we're still, it's a struggle. But I believe that we have the right people in the right place.
All right, very good. All right, our fourth speaker is Cathy Adduci, the president of River Forest. Cathy, you're up. Good morning.
Well, good morning. First, let me apologize for being a little late on the call. Like most of you, I'm sure you might have had a moment of silence, memorial for 9/11. And I was over at Village Hall with our firefighters and police department, and in a moment of silence and a moment of discussion about the tragic and the tragedy of 9/11. So please accept my apologies. I'm sorry to miss Mayor Hoskins' presentation, but I did get a little bit of Mayor Perkins and, of course, Anan's. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Carrie Summy and John for inviting me here. I also want to acknowledge, of course, one of my trustees, Erica Bachner, who is in your leadership. I don't think there's another trustee that's other than Erica. So thank you, Erica, for being part of this leadership lab. It's something that I believe is real important for our community. And the one thing that I am very proud of and I'm excited about is that we're expanding the leadership lab to include more neighborhoods, including Maywood and other neighborhoods, into the lab. I want to emphasize what Anan said. I am so proud and excited about the relationship that we have with Oak Park, Forest Park, and Maywood. I truly believe, one, I think we all like each other, truly like each other. I think we truly are trying to do the best for our community collectively. And we are working, I think, very well together in that regard, which really brings us to two of the major issues that are challenging, I think, all of us, of course, is COVID-19 and the civil unrest and the systemic racism that we see in our community. And both of them are extremely important issues as leaders to address. Like most of you, I don't know, I listen to a lot of leadership podcasts. And so I try to kind of sort out in my mind, as a leader, what should we be doing in today's environment? And in one of the podcasts, I thought it brought it home for me. And it said, leaders in the past, pre-COVID-19, we expect to have all the answers. That's what we leaders do. We give vision and guidance and give answers. But what kind of leader is they in this moment with COVID-19? And I think we don't have the answers. And so I think the leader in the moment is the person who's willing to hold the conversation, or the person who narrates and grounds us in this uncertainty. So I feel that is our role as leaders, is to begin to have an open, transparent conversation about what is happening, knowing we don't have all the answers. But our intention of wanting to tell the truth and our intentions of saying, I don't know the answers, I think is what will lead us out of these challenging times. I don't know if leaders, all of us would have agreed to that 9 months ago. But today, to me, the only thing we do have as leaders is to be able to talk with each other, tell what we believe, and hopefully guide us in this uncertain times, but knowing that we don't have all the answers. One of the things that I felt very proud of as a village president is working alongside my neighbor in Oak Park, Forest Park, particularly, and then of course Maywood. When we got hit with COVID-19, I really want to thank Anan. He rallied all of us together on a weekly call so that we could talk through what these issues were. So I want to thank Anan for that leadership. And it allowed us to talk through what was hitting us, because we didn't know. And as Anan said, he was one of the first to actually call shelter in place. And I'll never forget that day when we talked with Wednesday Journal, and that the next day, Governor Pritzker announced his statewide order of sheltering in place. And that was profound because it changed really our world after that. And immediately we kind of went into how can we begin to provide, PPEs to our community? How do we get information out to our community so that they're aware of how this time is and the uncertainty? I think the thing that I think I'm most proud of is that we did we provided a lot of transparency around what COVID-19 is, what it means, and how do we stop this virus. We continue to write weekly emails to our community. We work with all of our partners, whether it's D90, D200, library and parks. We collaborate with each other to make sure that our messages are similar, if not identical, on wearing masks and social distancing. So I'm very proud of the fact that all of us came together and collaborated together politics to a side. There was no politics. This was all about the health and safety of our community and the accountability of that health and safety of our community. We all stepped up to the accountability of it. As I said before, we put a lot of initiatives in place to stem at least to get information out, to acknowledge this is a real issue, to get our residents to understand how grave this issue was, and how important it is to ensure that those, especially with compromised immune systems or underlying health issues, are cared for. What we did immediately was put a senior response team together, led by Helen Kwan, one of our residents, who gathered a group of 100 volunteers to help our seniors in need that wasn't able to get out and buy groceries or do things that they would normally do. One day they were buying groceries at Jewel, and the next day they were told not to go out. So we immediately put the response team together. It was, I thought, a good success, and I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to get to so many of our seniors, which is a big population for River Forest. So I think changing leadership is, I guess, an important piece. The transparency, accountability, and the programs to ensure that all of our residents, specifically our seniors, are cared for. Now let me try to address the systemic racism and the issues around race, and I think it's a big one for us in River Forest. And I want to make sure that there's no confusion that River Forest is committed to equity and inclusion and diversity in our town. We had an incident back in June with a person who had an altercation at the Jewel, and it was tragic and it was uncalled for. And we immediately went into a place to understand the situation, and we asked the Cook County State's Attorney to get involved. And I believe the state attorney did the right thing and charged the gentleman with 2 counts of felony, a hate crime, and a aggravation battery. So I believe that was the right charge for that person. And from that came many positive things, unfortunately, but it did, truthfully. And one was the relationship and the commitment that we have made with Maywood. So Mayor Perkins, I want to thank you and the village of Maywood for being our partner, our friend, and our collaborator. I'm very proud of the covenant that I have already signed. I know Edwenna had already signed, and we're looking to have a big, hopefully, celebration in October of signing this Twin Village covenant. It really addresses many of the issues that are important to both of our communities. It talks about shared development. It talks about Chamber of Commerce and Supplier Diversity. It talks about shared use of facilities and equipment, ways that we can help each other be a better community. I'm excited about it. Trustee Bachner is helping us with forming a working group of minority residents to help us bring this to life. I'm also proud of the fact that we have just started a conversation with Dominican University on a framework and methodology that's called Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. This framework will help us bring together all these dialogues and conversations around anti-racism, anti-biases, and really understand how, first, the conversation is based on a higher level of hierarchy of human life. It's based on the fact that we all have more in common than we have that we don't. And so if we can start together and talk about what we have in common, and then talk about the truth of what we don't have in common, and what we need to change in order to live, together. I'm real proud that this is going to bring our dialogue to action and transformation and make our community a better community, a more equal community because of it. Now, we're not going to stop there. That's a community-wide. The framework will address, and I have to give kudos to Dr. Carroll from Dominican University, because if you think about systemic racism, and you begin to read what systemic racism is, it starts with having access and availability to education. And I think Dr. Carroll and Falls Concordia is stepping up to making that more accessible to both Black and Brown people of color. And so I am, then it doesn't stop there, because many students need jobs after they leave the university. And we're working with the university through this framework to begin to look at workforce development, internships, things that can really make a difference to the minority community, to really begin to get income equality. And then it's about, also about our community and how we treat people in our community. And we are absolutely going to look at data, and we're going to look at two things: be empathetic, and we're going to look at data to try to, we will change, not try, but we will change under law enforcement that we're responsible for. So we're taking another initiative that we're going to be announcing on Monday. That is a culture of equity and inclusion, where we are going to look at all of our policies and practices. Many of them have been updated, but we're going to take more of a critical look at how we can ensure that it truly is equitable, and it does truly inclusion in all of our policies and practices. So we're going to start off that initiative, and hopefully there will be much to transform our organization to a better and more equal and equitable organization. We constantly fight for, and we understand police accountability. I'm all for police accountability. I don't know if you've read in the Wednesday Journal, but one of our initiatives has always been to keep police accountability inside River Forest. I know many towns have given up the disciplinary action within the Police and Fire Commission. We've been fighting for that, meaning we are not getting it up. We want to control the disciplinary action. We don't want bad cops out on the streets. And so we're going to continue to fight that with the unions and not allow anybody to protect bad cops. And so we believe there's a lot to do, but I think we've also have been doing quite a lot to ensure the accountability of our police department. In general, this has been, as Nan has said, has been very challenging. I agree with what he said in terms of elected officials. It's a very difficult, trying time, but I think as an elected official, I believe we owe it to our community to be calm and to be steady and to be truthful, and continue to work with our community so that they have the information that they need and that they believe in what we are doing, and that they support it. We need the commitment to do that. In the end, I'm very appreciative of being part of this leadership team. There's a lot we could talk about, and I'm very proud of being part of this. So thank you for including me.
All right, thank Mayor Adduci. One of the things before we get to the classes, questions for the panelists, one of the things that sort of struck out to me, and we've sort of echoed this throughout the cohort, is when each one of the panelists spoke, it wasn't I, or me. It was always we. And the we was variable depending on who was speaking. We heard Mayor Hoskins talking about working with different people in their community and the different businesses on Madison Street and Roosevelt and others. We heard Mayor Perkins talking about how good the residents were about masking compared to some of the other communities and working with the churches and other groups. We had Anan was talking about how great the Oak Park staff was, and they really were the generals that needed to be in place to take this thing down. And then you've got Cathy talking about the different initiatives they're doing, and she mentioned having team members like Erica help lead the charge on some of these things. Dominican University be a partner in getting some of these things addressed. So being a leader doesn't mean doing everything yourself. It means making sure things get done in an open, transparent, honest way. And that means getting your team in place and leading that team. So I think that's a critical takeaway. Then the other thing that I thought really struck out was the amount of cross-pollination or collaboration between the communities, not within the community, but between each community. Every one of our speakers talked about something they were doing with one of the other communities. And I think that is the key. Pandemic or institutional racism or environmental issues or anything else, they don't know that Harlem Avenue exists. They don't care what's River Forest. They don't care what's Oak Park. They don't care about Des Plaines, or they don't care about Madison Street and Forest Park's on one side and River Forest is on the other, or they don't care that Maywood is on one side of the Des Plaines River and River Forest is on the other. These issues transcend municipal boundaries, and it takes a transcendent approach working across these boundaries to get anything done. So I think that was, to me, a key takeaway. So with that, what I'm going to do is open it up to anybody in the cohort who has a question for all of or a specific panelist. Carrie is going to be running quarterback on making sure people's mics are on and et cetera. But with that, I'm going to open it up to the class to ask questions of anybody on the panel. And we've got about 20 minutes to field questions. So with that, I'm going to open it up and let you guys talk.
Mayor Perkins, if you could please take yourself off of mute. I don't have the ability to do it. I don't know if it's your iPad or what. It's not letting me unmute you. So if you can hear me well, please unmute yourself. Thank you. If you have a question, you can unmute, raise your hand physically, or raise your hand emoji.
I have a question for Mayor Hoskins. You followed a leader in Forest Park who had been there for 20 years. Although you were a member of the city council, what was the hardest part in stepping into those shoes for someone who had placed their stamp on the village for 2+ decades, even though knowing what you knew while being serving as a member of the city council?
I knew that we had a structural deficit that had plagued the village for a number of years. We're about a $21 million a year village, and most years we budgeted with a deficit of about 1.5 million or so. We have revenue from a number of funds, like a water fund and some other TIFs that we can use to offset the deficit in our general revenue fund. But again, to answer your question, I knew that we had a structural deficit. So the current council quickly put in place some other revenue generating means. We implemented a sewer tax that will bring in about $500,000 a year, a little bit more than that actually. We instituted parking meters on Madison Street and other places in Forest Park, and that's going to bring in several $100,000 a year. And we implemented a motor fuel tax, and we engaged a collections firm to chase after delinquent payments for parking tickets and other ordinance violations. And we hope to possibly recruit or attract a cannabis dispensary that will provide additional revenue. So for 20 years, I mean, we had great leadership in terms of building a community, a pretty close-knit community, a really engaged business community, and a Madison Street and a surrounding area that makes families want to come to Forest Park. But the deficit in addressing some of those issues was the toughest to address.
Tracy.
Sorry. I just want to tag on to that and ask the question, is there any other way to sort of bridge that financial gap other than taxing everybody?
Well, the way that governments bring in revenue is generally through either taxes or other fees for services. We sought to expand our economy by attracting new businesses that will spend money in town, add to the revenue in terms of property taxes and whatnot. We've been successful in obtaining certain grants. We went to Springfield and begged and pleaded for a $750,000 grant to demolish some buildings in town that we think will make it easier to develop attractive land in Forest Park. It's referred to as the Altenheim property. If anyone is familiar with Forest Park's Rib Fest or the Altenheim Senior Home, this is about maybe an 8 or 9 acre plot of vacant green land that's northwest of the Blue Line station, the end of the Forest Park Blue Line. Excuse me, the end of the CTA Blue Line, which is called the Forest Park Station. Anyway, if we're able to develop that, we expect it to add revenue to the general fund. But in terms of bringing in revenue, I guess people can just donate to the village. Tracy, if you want to donate to the village of Forest Park, you're welcome. I won't consider it a tax. There's no cap on potential donations. Of course, I'm being silly. Yeah. But in any event, we have challenges bringing in revenue.
Yeah, Mayor Hoskins makes a good point, and it's that's the biggest. That's why economic development, that term economic development, is such a big deal to municipalities. And the revenue side of things is tough. And if you look at your tax bill, a lot of people complain about their city with regard to their tax bill, but the actual municipal government is a relatively small piece of your tax bill. The county, the state, the school district, other districts are a much bigger collective percentage of your tax bill than is the city. And that's true for any city. But it's tax revenue is the structure which is in place to fuel the economic engine of municipalities. So it's a tough thing, which is why business development is so crucial. Yeah.
Additional questions?
I'm curious real quick, and I think it might be helpful while other people in the class are jotting down their questions to ask after this one. What did all of you do, or do you do, before you came, or now that you are mayor? Because it's not like, what'd you do before you became mayor? Oh, I've always been a mayor. People become mayors from other walks of life, depending on what it was that drove them to run for office. So I'm just very curious in just a couple of seconds, what do you do or did you do, in your quote unquote civilian life? I think it's important for the cohort members to know mayors come from all walks of life, and I think that's crucial. So I'm just curious. I think it'd be helpful for people to hear that.
So let me just jump in. I was a former social worker. I moved to Chicago from Texas to be a social worker in 1994 and spent 5 years in that field. Then I had the opportunity to work for the Illinois Department of Commerce and Community Affairs, which is now called the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, or DCEO. It's the state's lead economic development agency. And I was there from 2000 to 2006. I think that's the job that probably most prepared me to be an elected official of a municipality. I spent 3 years working for KPMG in their tax, state and local tax group, working with credits and incentives, discretionary grants that states can make to attract businesses, or tax credits. In Illinois, they have something called the EDGE tax credit, economic development for a growing economy. It's used to attract businesses or to retain businesses that may be in a position to expand. And then in my second year serving on the council in 2009, I made the decision to go back to school. I went to law school. I became an attorney. So my day job is working for a quasi-state insurance regulator called the Office of the Special Deputy. I'm able to do that remotely from Village Hall in Forest Park. I log on using my work-issued laptop, and I can also be on hand to address issues in the village to the extent that I'm needed.
So I'll be next. Interesting enough, I've been in government since 2009. I ran as trustee in 2009, and then for village president in 2013. During some of that time period, I spent a little over 33 years with a company called Unisys Corporation, which is a technology company, Fortune 500 company. And I had various jobs throughout my 33 plus years with the company. When I retired from it 5 years ago, I was running a fairly large unit of one of their businesses. Was called their outsourcing business, which was roughly $1 billion. And I had thousands of people who reported to me, finance, operations, software developers, human resource operations as well. So I had I think, a deep understanding of organizations and businesses and how one is run. But I could tell you, government's slightly different than certainly running a business, but they do go hand in hand. And the one thing I think that River Forest is most proud of right now is that we've balanced our budget for almost 9 consecutive years. And we did that with a lot of hard decision making back 9 years ago. And of course, COVID-19 is throwing us into a little bit of a whirlwind. But I think I'm very confident that the team and the trustees together, I believe we're going to be able to survive the next year because of the way we managed our budget years ago. We ensured that we had enough reserve in our reserve fund, which you need. We also ensured that we constantly and funded our capital equipment replacement fund, our capital improvement fund, and we continued to fund our pension obligations. And the reason we made those decisions back when we did, I think partly was because of some of my background and my understanding of finance, and to say that, bond rating companies and other finance organizations will look at your organization's finances, and that's how they're going to determine how you can borrow, if you can borrow in the future. So I feel that River Forest is in a very good shape. If we need to do any borrowing to get over the next year or 2 years in some of the revenue shortfalls that we're going to certainly see. We talked about sales tax. The interesting thing about River Forest, though, unlike I know Oak Park and Forest Park and Maywood, we're primarily a residential community. We have some commercial along Madison and North Avenue in Harlem. But so those commercials that we have, we certainly always try to ensure that, the lucky thing about it is, who would have known that grocery stores were the thing to have in COVID-19, and River Forest has 3 of them. So that really helped us get over the hump of the sales tax loss. I guess we got lucky in that. That wasn't a skill, that was a luck. But I would say that as my background, I believed it really, I believe it helped us is going to get through this challenging time. But now I'm retired and I serve on various boards, both nonprofit as a volunteer, and I serve on a local bank board. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but in River Forest, the trustees and the village president and the clerk do not get paid. We don't get paid. We like it that way. At least I like it that way. We don't get reimbursed for anything. I can't say we are volunteers because we aren't. We run for elected office, but we truly are public servants of our town. And I'm really proud of the team that we have, all the trustees, the clerk, the staff that make that all happen. So anyway, background does matter, and I'm happy to be part of this whole thing. So thanks.
Mayor Perkins and Anan, a little bit about what you do when you're not a mayor.
Okay, now I just want to let you know that I did 30 years, 6 months, and 2 days at the Maywood post office, and I retired. And my husband and I, we had 3 children, so we got involved in the education, so became involved in Proviso and Garfield. And my husband was on the board for the union. So that kept us busy, and that's some of the things that I have done prior to becoming on the board. And I became on the board in the year 2000. So I'm going into my 20th year. I didn't realize that, but that's what I'm working on. But it takes all of this to make your town complete, because it takes a village to raise one child, and we have quite a few of them. So I've been around a minute, and that's what I tell people. I've been around a minute. But thank you very much, and I do appreciate this opportunity to allow the citizens here in our community to know that we do exist and we do care about the citizens here. And our township is 15 towns, and we care about all of them. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
You bet. Well, we're glad you're here. Anan, a little bit about you, background.
Well, my wife and I have been small business owners for the last 35 years, and she's the boss, and I work for her. And to follow up on Cathy's comment about being paid, we don't get paid enough in Oak Park, so I think it's probably a larger discussion as far as being paid versus not being paid. I think this is a big commitment. I think that there's it's not only a big commitment. If you want to serve the public and you're committed to it, and I know we are, it's a consuming job. It's a consuming work. You don't just take the weekend off or a weekday off, or you don't turn it off. I mean, when I go on vacations with my wife, I'm taking pictures of garbage cans and dumpsters and traffic signs, and I'm going across the street to take a picture of a business that I think could be recruited to our village. But I think that, as you said earlier, John, that governments are not defined as businesses, but they function as, and I like how you said that. I'm actually going to borrow that term from you. Whatever you do, you have to, I think it's important to have the drive and the fire, and I think it's important to have a vision and to have a plan and to know how to figure out how to bring people together to support that plan. And I think in what we do, without having alignment with people on the board, without having alignment with the economy at your back, without having alignment with the community support, and without having a plan, you can't get a damn thing done. And And so all these have to fall in the right place. And it becomes almost a random event for every occurrence to happen. It becomes almost a random event. And so if one doesn't have the energy and the life experiences and the desire to make an impactful change on the community they serve, then you just show up. And I think that I'm very proud that over the last 7 years we have brought in over $900 million of new investments into our town. Think about that. I mean, think about these high rises that people fight us about all the time. If they were not around for the last 6 months to support these small businesses in the downtown area. I mean, think about the property taxes that they're going to provide. Think about what was there before. And so I just feel that if one doesn't have the spine to fight the fight and to be disliked and to lose a few friends during the process, stay away, because let somebody else do it. Anyway, that's don't get me going on that. Thank you.
No, but I agree, and it's so real quick. First of all, a couple of takeaways. I'm glad I'm not the only one that takes pictures for work when I go on vacation. I'll take pictures of stuff. My wife will ask me what I'm doing. I go, I wonder what zoning regulations are allowing that development to take place, and she thinks I'm bananas. But anyway, I've got thousands of photos. But the other thing, if you unpack this, and I think this is important, and we've had Carrie just in the last few cohorts, I don't know, I think maybe 4 or 5 elected officials, and CLP before that had even more elected officials from several backgrounds. So we've got small business owner / restaurateur, postal worker / education, corporate IT, and then a social worker / commerce expert / attorney. I mean, it takes every kind of background to form into a good leader and a network of leadership. And I think that's important for everybody on this call to take away, that there isn't a required resume to be a good leader. It's the intangible, regardless of what your background is, that can make you a good leader. And I think that's a hugely important takeaway. So I just wanted to get that out there. So Carrie, I know we don't have a lot of time left. We're trying to be mindful. We've got 1 minute. Does anybody have a burning question they can get out there in the next 60 seconds?
Mayor McGinnis.
I have one, but I'll step aside if anyone else has another one.
And we've got Al Hunter. Are there any can I just give it to the cohort first?
Yes.
Any cohort members with a question? Michael, I see your hand up, Michael. And
Hi. It's a question for Rory, Mayor Hoskins. I know a lot of people were upset about the meters being put in, especially a lot of the bank customers and a lot of the business owners. With the bank customers, we just mentioned we had the free lot and it kind of was over their head and they forgot about it right away. With the business owners, after seeing the streets still fill up, they kind of, forgot about it. So in my eyes, taxing, the meters was a good way to bring in, some revenue, especially if you are working at a deficit. You got to do something to make change. So I kind of commend you for going that route. My question kind of to you is, you're reopening the bars with the outdoor seating. It's kind of a good way for them to sustain some of that revenue or lost revenue right now with the bad weather and the snow coming up. I was wondering if there's any kind of options you might have for these businesses to kind of gain some of that lost revenue that they're kind of hoping and banking on right now with this little outdoor seating and the little restrictions that were kind of lifted for, all of Madison Street, which is pretty much bars, restaurants, and, small businesses.
Yeah, so actually, so the meters were actually requested by a lot of the business owners because it's a way to recycle, the cars that are parked there. They didn't want people parking there for 6 hours at a time and not even patronizing their businesses, someone who's commuting downtown or what have you. So anyway, they wanted the meters. In terms of outdoor seating, I was approached recently by one of the main restaurant owners, and he wants to erect sort of a canvas enclosure that would maintain the aura of outdoor seating, but also protect people from the elements. And he has a number of portable heaters that he wants to set up as well. I think it's a reasonable approach. I've talked to some of my colleagues, the 4 other commissioners about it. We have to make sure that it doesn't impede persons using, wheelchairs or mobile scooters, so as not to bring us out of compliance with ADA and whatnot. Earlier, I apologize. I gave an incomplete answer. I was asked about, whether there's any way to raise money without, taxing our residents. I mean, of course, municipalities get regular, state distributions, but those are still tax dollars. But there are other funds. We have some of our police officers partner with federal agencies, and we're able to get what is called seizure funds. So if we, for instance, make a drug bust or stop someone with large quantities of contraband, we get a portion of the proceeds back from the federal government, and we use those dollars to fund police purchases. John talked a lot about the importance of economic development. Sometimes if you have a large development in your community, you can get them to pay you what's called an impact fee. It's a one-time payment, but it can be a large payment that can help with, significant purchases, and it goes into the general fund. I was recently approached, the village was recently approached by a gentleman who wants to install billboards in Forest Park. That's a way of incurring an economic impact fee that, will be in the 6 figures and could bring recurring revenue to Forest Park in terms of ground leasing rights associated with the installation of the billboard. So there are a number of ways to generate revenue without, directly taxing your residents. So I apologize for that incomplete answer earlier.
I think, and something you said just spurred me about billboards. I'm not a big fan of billboards, but the notion is there as well. Telecommunications, when cell towers first became a thing 20, 25 years ago, municipalities were having cell towers constructed on village-owned property and then leasing out to providers monthly lease fees to provide revenue coming into the villages based on cellular telecommunications. That's why I see so many cell towers on like water towers and things like that, because it's revenue to the municipality. So those are, Mayor, those are both good good points. I think we all have to get used to maybe eating outside with parkas on. So just toughen up a little bit so we can eat outside in the cold weather. So
the Illinois Restaurant Association is having a contest where they're paying $5,000 for the most innovative way to maintain outdoor seating, because most people, certainly myself included, are not willing to eat indoors in a restaurant right now. So it's a challenge, and that was a great question, Michael.
To take a cue from the automobile industry, heated outdoor seats. And then
Hey, it's a good idea. Nah, that's would be at Maya's.
I'll share the 5,000 with everybody on the call. All right, so I know we're running a bit over. Mary, did you have a chance to get your question out there real fast? I know we're about 5 minutes over right now.
No, I mean, I guess I'll make an observation is that I'm very appreciative for the comments by the mayor, so I want to say thank you. I'm on the faculty of the Leadership Lab, and I also teach leadership at DePaul University. So what I most appreciated was Anan's reflections around the role of the leader, and then some of the challenges that one experiences in a VUCA environment, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And many of the comments and themes that came up across the mayor's contributions had to do with this lack of ability or the need for the ability to intervene through dialogue, through will of good decision-making and good judgment, and through a personal commitment. And so I was just left with a question, and it doesn't need to be answered, but the question that really percolated up for me was, knowing that leaders must resource themselves, you know, I'm curious about how you resource yourself in this type of environment. But more so, what are the personal commitments that you make as mayors in your communities to mentor emerging leaders? I know that you are involved with the Leadership Lab. Mayor Perkins talked about inviting the citizenry in. And so maybe it's a question for another day, but given these challenges, particularly at this moment in time, that's what I'm interested to hear. How are you sponsoring and mentoring others to come into leadership, particularly when we know that it's so vital to have that and bring people into that complexity and that stress and pressure that you all spoke about? So I just want to say thank you for your time, generosity of time, and your generosity of candor as well today.
All right, so with that, we're a few minutes over. So again, panelists, thank you so much. I think this is critical to hear what, for everybody in our cohort, what it takes to be a leader, what issues are really facing our communities, and to let people know that anybody, regardless of background and training, or maybe where they thought they were going to start out, can really end up in a really pivotal and crucially important position with the communities in which they live. So all of you mayors, thank you so much for taking the time. Look forward to working with you again and more in the future, and have a great day. And thank you again so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we will be recording this. I'll post it later today. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.